So Russia captured a Bradley fighting vehicle and promptly showed it off to the whole world. U.S. aid to Ukraine going forward is coming under increasing pressure in Congress. And we ran a poll asking you all who you think is actually winning this war. What's going on, everyone? Let's take a look at some updates as it relates to the ongoing war in Ukraine. Starting with battlefield updates using some maps put together here by War Mapper on Twitter. I want to start with Avdiivka, which is an area of eastern Ukraine that's been at the front since 2014. For the past month and a half or so, Russia has continued to make progress to the north and south of Avdiivka. Over the course of the past 7 to 10 days, they have gained additional territory to the north of the city. The challenge here for Ukraine, of course, is that it's a bit of a salient, and they have forces at risk of being cut off inside of Avdiivka. This looks very similar to what we saw in Bakhmut about a year ago, when Russian forces surrounded the access points to Bakhmut on the north and south, and anything into and out of the city was under direct fire Russian control, and it really limited how Ukraine was able to keep that fight going. Avdiivka's held for a long time. It's been in a very tough spot for Ukraine for a long time, but every few meters that Russia is able to advance to the north and the south makes this an even more tenuous situation for the Ukrainian forces there. Then shifting over to Marinka, another city that's been at the front lines since 2014. Last week, Russia put out that they had fully captured Marinka. It was now under their control. It's kind of semantics to a degree at this point. Eventually, we'll be able to nail down a date and say this is the time exactly when Marinka fell to Russian forces. But we saw this with Severodonetsk, Bakhmut, now Marinka, and other cities that have been contested throughout this war. It's hard to say exactly where that line is. What is the point where you say now that city entirely is under Russian control? I think it's safe to say at this point that the vast majority of that area is in Russian control. Looks like the fighting has shifted to the westernmost outskirts of Marinka. The lines are still holding for Ukraine to the north and south of town. But in terms of the Marinka city itself, or what remains, it's essentially just ruins at this point. As of a few days ago, that is now fully under Russian control. Now, overall, right now, I would say that Russia has the momentum in this war. They're making more advances in more areas than Ukraine is. But Ukraine has made a little progress in a few areas. We've got Crimea right here, where Ukraine was able to recapture a little bit of territory they had previously lost. And then down southwest near Kherson, Ukraine has managed to establish a bridgehead across the Dnieper River. It's relatively small. You're talking about companies, maybe battalion-sized elements that have moved across, able to fight Russian forces at this point. It's not clear what that's going to be used for in the long term. Look, big picture with all of these, you're talking about very incremental gains, very small progress when looking at the overall scope of the war. But it's not to downplay the violence or the devastation that's happening in this war. I mean, there are multiple points all across the front, very kinetic every single day, going through a lot of men and equipment on both sides. It's just when you're looking at the territorial changes and pulling up another source here from War Mapper showing the percentage of Ukrainian territory under Russian control, it just hasn't hardly changed at all since last September and October. And that little drop down that you're seeing there was the Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kharkiv and Kherson. So when those large chunks of territory that Russia occupied fell back into Ukrainian control. But since then, I mean, it's just relatively stagnant. And there's another graphic they put together. I think it's just a great resource to kind of get an idea of what's happening here, showing the percentage change in territorial control. And I mean, you got to go back 12 months before it's even 0.1% of Ukrainian territory that changes hands. Now that's, as a percentage of all Ukrainian territory, but, we see these maps when we get down in these weeds and we kind of nitpick, block by block and city by city. But when you really step back and see how much of the country, the territory of the country has changed hand, it's been minimal for about a year now. Then a video just came out a few days ago showing a captured Bradley fighting vehicle is now in Russian hands. It was supposedly immobilized in Luhansk, and Russia says that they were able to sneak forward at night, attach some tow cables, and then move it back through minefields to their positions. They then put out a video highlighting the Bradley with a reporter in it, showing all the technology, the fancy technology in this piece of Army equipment. Now, the Pentagon says that to date, the U.S. has sent 186 Bradley fighting vehicles to Ukraine. And according to Oryx, the tracking website, they say as many as 29 total Bradleys have been destroyed. And now the first one has been captured by Russian forces. Now, I know this isn't exactly rational, but it kind of stings anytime I see Russia displaying U.S. military equipment. I mean, all of this stuff, it's in war. It's military equipment in war. It's designed to be destroyed. It's, to a degree, you expect some of this to be captured, especially in a large-scale conventional war. But I don't know, just don't like seeing that. Don't like seeing our stuff in Russian hands. Then last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree to increase the size of the Russian military to 1.32 million, which would be a net increase of 170,000. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, they said, quote, "The increase in full-time strength of the armed forces is due to the growing threats to our country associated with the special military operation and the ongoing expansion of NATO," end quote. Now, Russia specifically called out that this increase of 170,000 would be due to recruitment, as in people volunteering to go into the military, and that they would not be conscripting additional personnel into the force. But we're going to have to wait and see on that front. Look, since the fall of the Soviet Union, when Russia has kind of at times tried to turn into a professional volunteer force of sorts, conscription's always kind of played a part, they've always struggled to meet their recruitment goals. So it'd be surprising right now, unless they drastically change their compensation. It's hard to imagine that there's 170,000 people just standing by, interested in military service, and said, well, now if you're going to open up the slots, I'm going to go for it, especially in the time of war, when they're seeing, I mean, whatever you think the casualty figures are coming out of Ukraine, there's a lot of people dying over there. So to think that just saying now we have the spots is going to attract 170,000 new people, I would imagine, wait and see, I would imagine there's going to be at least some sort of kind of shadow mobilization going on that isn't publicly announced. Now, one of the major challenges that Ukraine has and continues to face in this war is their dependence on foreign aid to be able to stay in the fight. And that is not looking good right now in a lot of ways. So U.S. President Biden presented a $61 billion aid package about a month ago to Congress, but hadn't made any progress since then. And right now, the Speaker of the House, Johnson, has said that Ukraine aid is dependent upon, quote, enactment of transformative change to our nation's border security laws. And this is essentially the most pushback we've seen in the United States when it comes to funding Ukraine and their ability to fight this war. So our border and immigration policy is messy. It's not a quick policy fix by any stretch of the imagination. So anything being tied to changes in border and immigration policy, look, there's a chance it doesn't get through at all. And we haven't seen that yet with anything Ukraine related. There's been some debates and a handful of votes where you start to see some support falter at times. It's been a major topic in presidential debates, and I think a lot of people were looking out a couple years to say maybe this will change down the road, but it's on the table right now. It's not clear, as we sit here today at the beginning of December, that there is going to be another Ukraine aid package passed anytime soon. Now, as an indicator of just how much things have changed in a relatively short period of time, we got a couple comments here from U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, who has been one of the more hawkish members of Congress just in general, you kind of end it there. Relatively hawkish when it comes to the use of U.S. military capabilities or enabling our partners to fight our adversaries like Ukraine is doing in Russia. So just the other day, and I'll play a couple clips here, Graham said that there will be no more aid to other countries until we secure our own border.
I've been involved in this issue for 20 years. This is not about immigration reform, and it needs to happen. It's about securing a broken border at a time when the threats to our nation are all-time high, and it started with Afghanistan. The world is on fire. Multiple fronts and getting worse every day. There will be no assistance to other nations who are deserving until we assist our own nation.
Then it was just like 6 or 7 months ago when Senator Graham was in Ukraine talking to President Zelensky, where his comments around aid just sounded very, very different.
Big support, very important.
The best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's, we're on this is 457th day of a war that was supposed to last 3 days. You amaze me. Your country amazes me.
It's about our people and about your people. Your people help our people. All our appreciation.
You remind me of our better selves in America.
So we ran a poll on this channel last week, and it turns out that 42% of you don't think that Ukraine or Russia are currently winning this war, which is interesting. Now, grab that question from a poll put out by the Reagan Foundation. They do like a national defense survey each year, something like that. And I used word for word their questions, so we had something to compare it to. Their survey size, or their sample size, was 2,500 random American adult citizens. Turns out our sample size was 53,000, so that's kind of cool. They have a bunch of demographic data. They're like a real legit polling. They're doing it, the right way. We're doing it on social media. So they've got all the detailed demographic data. I'll link their report in the description below if you want to check that out. But all we have on this is 53,000 votes with a breakdown of the votes, and that's it. So global audience, I can say that for sure. But the way it broke out here on YouTube was that 29% said that Russia is currently winning the war, 22% said that Ukraine is winning, 42% said neither, and 7% said don't know. Got to respect that don't know. I like having that option in these polls where you want to see the results, but you don't really want to weigh in. Solid. Now, comparing that with the Reagan Foundation data points, in their data, 31% said Russia was winning, 34% said Ukraine was winning, 23% said neither, and 12% said don't know. So if I'm being honest, when I saw these results, I never really know what to expect, but I was kind of proud of you guys. Look, it's such a... I've been so frustrated with this since this war kicked off. Everybody wants to view war and conflict like a sporting event where you can look up the scoreboard and just say, well, now Ukraine is winning, and then 1, 2, 3 happens, and now Russia's winning. That's not how war works. I mean, Ukraine and Russia are fighting for different reasons right now. They have different objectives. Victory looks different for each one of these two sides. So there is no good way to throw one thing up on the screen and say, because of this or because of that, one side or the other is winning. I would say Russia has the momentum in Ukraine right now, but in terms of who's winning, I'm right there in that neither camp. And, getting into some opinion pieces here, but look, I think it'd be very difficult to look at where Russia sits today and say that when they kicked this thing off 2 years ago, they expected to lose this volume of men and equipment and still be where the lines are in Ukraine and have lost what they've lost on the international stage. I think it's a while before Russia could look at this. We got a long ways to go before Russia could look back on this and call this a successful war or a victorious war. It's not all sunshine and roses on the Russian side, far from it. And then for Ukraine, I think it's very hard to say that Ukraine is winning the war when they are not successfully expelling Russia from the occupied territories, right? So leading up to the counteroffensive, that was something that you could say is like, well, it's a stalemate or it's not moving. Just wait until Ukraine does this. Well, now they've done that. The counteroffensive is wrapped. I don't know what you can point to right now to say that Ukraine is winning, unless it's just the argument that because Russia has not won, therefore Ukraine is winning. So anyways, I fall in that camp, the 42% of neither. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in national security subjects, be sure to check out the sit reps I put out on Substack. A link is in the description below. Substack now also has ad-free, sponsor-free videos that go live about 1 hour before they're up on YouTube. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.